The Prestige. It's got Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, a bunch of great actors. Andy Serkis, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, and even David Bowie as Nikola Tesla. How cool. The interplay in this movie between the idea of the science of Nikola Tesla, the secret technology happening up on the mountains in Colorado at the time, based on the local folklore and magic and trying to be a successful magician, is just an amazing recipe. The technology that Nikola Tesla is coming up with in this movie and during this time period in real life is so surreal and so phenomenal that it basically is like magic. And when you go read the original Nikola Tesla files and where they ended up and what happened after he died, it's just as crazy. The entire movie has this theme where Hugh Jackman's character keeps going to Nikola Tesla to try and get a magician's advantage, this special trick over his opponent, Christian Bale, and trying to outperform him as a stage magician. This idea of teleporting or transferring objects or energy at a distance, like quantum entanglement, is something that looks like magic to everybody, and Nikola Tesla doesn't even fully understand it. The plot twist between these characters trying to one-up each other as stage magicians to be the most famous magician in the world is just an incredible plot twist after plot twist. But did you know, this sort of Nikola Tesla time travel chamber technology where you clone yourself, turn invisible, or teleport from one place to another, this was actually a real thing. In the movie, it's portrayed as sort of a water escape trick where Hugh Jackman locks himself in the chamber and then he teleports himself out of it, basically cloning himself, while one version of himself drowns inside the tank. The other one apparently continues on to be the new magician. So it creates this whole philosophical paradox of which one is really him, and did he die inside the tank, or is he the new version that teleported? And it's a whole mystery. What really happened was Nikola Tesla's technology and inventions in 1943 were utilized for an experiment called the Philadelphia experiment to try and take an entire naval ship and make it disappear using electromagnetic frequencies. Intense electromagnetic frequencies, positive and negative on opposite ends of the USS Eldridge. They tried to make the ship invisible. But what happened was the ship actually disappeared, teleported, and then reappeared, and everybody on board was melted into the walls of the ship, like there was a quantum time dilation or a reality and matter displacement, and everything melted together. Oh. After this, a bunch of psychotronic programs started, including Montauk, which is the basis of the entire show Stranger Things. Governments using radars and frequencies and headsets and all that to try and find the perfect sort of waveform for mind control. Not just mind control, they were trying to understand human consciousness, the nature of reality, to communicate through the past and through time into alternate dimensions, and even to talk to aliens. There's been a lot of movies and science fiction shows made about the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project under different names. But some of the scientists that came out of these projects or were mentored by the people that ran these programs are still alive today, and you can hear them talk about it too.
I know the guy who was the director of the Philadelphia experiment. Secret, nobody ever found out who he is. And the director of the Philadelphia experiment. Secret, nobody.
These programs are still alive today, and you can hear them talk about it too.
I know the guy who was the director of the Philadelphia experiment. Secret, nobody ever found out who he is. And somebody decided that some of Tesla's technology, in other words, if you had, in those days they had big coils bigger than this thing, all stuck on the side of the ship, hanging like little life jacket things, you know, what do you call them, lifesaver. And Tesla had worked out a method that by putting a magnetic field through these coils that you could neutralize the Earth's magnetic field exactly, and therefore the enemy, at that time the German submarines who had magnetic detectors, couldn't locate the ship by magnetic detection, called target invisibility. So the Navy started this experiment in October of 43. In other words, just enough time to steal a document, get a program going, took an old ship in a Navy yard that already had Gaussian coils, and they had all the measuring equipment around. Somebody threw the switch to energize the coils, and what happened surprised everybody to this day. The ship suddenly disappeared from its moorings in Philadelphia, showed up and was witnessed in Norfolk, which is about 300 miles south, and then popped back into its original berth, and about 200 men aboard, and they all went cuckoo. Some of them were mentally ill the rest of their lives, hospitalized. I know some of the men who survived and what they experienced. So that's what the Philadelphia experiment was about. Being in the middle of the war, nobody had time to try to figure out what had happened and to repeat the thing. As far as I know, the Navy never, they tried, but they never really mounted a full-scale effort after that to try to find out what really happened with that Philadelphia experiment.
Most of the people that I met, which ended up being intimately connected with the Montauk Project, and I must say I wasn't there very much myself. No, I lived in New York State, but all the people, it seemed like I was rubbing shoulders with every other day. Why? Well, I was an early speaker at the U.S. Psychotronics Association for, 20 or 30 years. In fact, my 1987 lecture to the U.S. Psychotronics Association has gone viral 30 years later on my YouTube channel, Dan Winter Fractal Field, talking about being and consciousness. We were scratching our heads about physics of consciousness for a long time. Anywho, so what does this have to do with Montauk? Remember, the central principle behind what psychotronics called a psychologically active electric circuit, the central principle is embodied in one simple conundrum, messy problem, which was, if you take a simple hunk of wire and touch both ends to your car battery, it's going to blow up and probably kill you. Now, however, if you take that same chunk of wire and wind it into a caduceus, up and down coil, think phase conjugation. I didn't know that a caduceus was phase conjugation till many years later. But if you wind a caduceus and touch the same wire, the same battery, it's going to stay cool. But if you point that at your friend at their solar plexus, they're going to feel nausea. Mm. And so there we were for 30 years, and I mean 30 years, scratching our heads. Why? Now I know exactly why. Because if you conjugate that electric field down a caduceus, optimized by golden ratio, that's going to convert the transverse wave to a longitudinal at the point, and you point the longitudinal wave at somebody. Mm-hmm. You're creating feeling, you're creating gravity, you're creating implosion, you're creating centripetal force. Ultimately, you're making a Stargate. Heck, there's all kinds of gorgeous, powerful, beautiful physics if you really know what a caduceus is, hence Thoth Hermes, who's central behind all these stories. So this was fundamental to all of our conversations. So now in walks, let's talk the first person on this list, Andrija Puharich. Now, Andrija Puharich, I was explaining to Elena Danaan the other day how he got to be the first guy that talked to Enki Tom Atun, which became the story of the Nine. Well, how did that happen? Well, Andrija Puharich was studying how you use audio heterodyning in capacitors behind the ears. And if you perfect that heterodyning to be phase conjugate, you suddenly have a bit of clairaudience. Except Puharich didn't call it clairaudience. No, he simply called it, how shall we trigger people's ears so deaf people can hear? But during the time that Andrija Puharich is patenting these circuits to use capacitors to phase couple capacitively entrain the bones near the ear and induce hearing in the deaf. He was expert at this. And the pictures I have, this is all in the slideshow, fractalfield.com/slideshow. You will see the pictures. Anywho, suddenly he's studying clairvoyance, and one day who's making the phone calls to him? This guy named Tom Atun. Atun? Tom. Who was Tom? Oh, turns out that was Enki. And this is where Phyllis Schlemmer, educated by Puharich, teaches what became eventually Deep Space Nine and Star Trek. Started that day, and I was kind of there. So Preston Nichols walks into Psychotronics, and he's got this octahedral, let's see if I can do this now. I should do this right here. He has this octahedral antenna. called the Decadelta antenna. And there is Preston Nichols, center to the Montauk myth, saying that he can make these very unusual phenomena happen with his Decadelta antenna.
Mm-hmm.
And later, Preston Nichols is the center of many and hundreds of Montauk stories. So